DESIblitz.com.
When I was very young, when I was about 4 or 5, I remember seeing a piano at a friend's house and kind of running up to it and getting really excited because it was just an amazing instrument. And I remember as a 4-year-old kind of banging on the keys and just thinking it's an incredible thing to play. Also, I remember seeing going to a mehfil like near my mum and dad where they were living, and seeing an amazing tabla player there who I thought was really exciting when I was about 5 years old, and I just loved the rhythms that were coming out of his hands as well. But I kind of grew up playing a lot of classical piano. And then from there on, I started playing some jazz piano as well. And then I got into playing flamenco guitar. And then at a nearby Gurdwara, I mean, we're from a Hindu background, but there was a Sikh temple near us. And I remember learning from a guy who was teaching me a bit of sitar and some tabla. I didn't get into full-on classical learning at that point, Indian classical learning, but I kind of enjoyed it. And it kind of supplemented what else I was doing. I mean, I was playing in rock bands and funk bands and a punk band eventually. So I was kind of in lots of different things. But yeah, I mean, I loved music. I was always playing. For me, it's kind of my attraction is towards being a composer and producer, and then being an instrumentalist is kind of secondary to that. But yeah, I grew up loving playing. You know, it's kind of, I mean, it was difficult to make that transition actually. When you're a musician and you play a lot, it's a whole different ballgame to kind of become a composer. You know, to write for films or to produce other artists or to write albums and so on. It's a very different way of thinking to just thinking about your art as a musician. So when I was as an artist playing music and playing the guitar and practicing, all of that became secondary over time to wanting to create sounds and flavors and music that kind of fitted to the projects I might be working on.
Pois difícil é saber como falar e não dizer.
So I don't want to make an album of messages necessarily. What I try to do is give a voice or platform to different feelings, and those might not just be my feelings. I work with a lot of great artists on this album, and a lot of different people who've come from either immigrant heritage from different places. Like Nina Miranda is actually, has come from Brazilian heritage. Iana Witter-Johnson from her African heritage. Anna Phoebe, who's got even a Greek background and German background. Working with people who have some kind of connection with the idea of immigration or immigrants, and giving them a voice based on the idea of immigrants and how they feel about that, as well as working with me. I mean, sometimes I'll write all the lyrics. For example, there's a track called You Are, which I brought in Eva, who's an amazing singer, to sing on that track and then put that together. And it was incredible because we got a really good response from Billie Eilish, for example, on that track. So it's great that we're still kind of getting amazing responses from very young people who are kind of enjoying the music.
You are my protest. You are belief. You are my witness. You are relief. You are my nation. You are my state. My one companion. You are my fate.
There's no one on this album who, if any of them were in this room now, they would have a lot to say about the issue of immigration. So these are very intelligent artists who are incredibly talented and skilled. I mean, I would put the singers on this album against anyone. They're phenomenal singers. In terms of rap, you've got people like Speck, who I would put on the level with people like Q-Tip, or, he's got a very comparable voice. I mean, a guy who's really studied rap and knows a lot about rap, who actually came up with great lyrics. The tracks on this album, I think, are very much about what I love about music right now in the UK. There's a lot of different influences. There's a lot of different diverse ideas in music on this album, but it feels, what I wanted to make was an album that felt like it had a narrative flow to it. Not a concept album, but an album that felt like it had relevance and it was coming from a genuine place in terms of what I feel about what's going on with politics today.
So am I a militant? Because I'm pro-immigrant, penetrating sickness like syphilis. It's ridiculous how low they make you sing, following the crowd into groupthink. Now I'm writing history in new ink. Call on the guards, they're calling on the guards to protect invisible borders of ours.
I grew up in Rochester in Kent, and the National Front was very strong then. The National Front being a very aggressively far-right political party, where weren't even political. They felt like a gang of thugs, really, and which is what they were. I was attacked many times, by people who had affiliations with the National Front. It was a pretty scary place to grow up. I mean, I was pretty much the only Asian around. There weren't other Asians that I could talk to about this. It was quite a kind of isolating time to grow up for a British Asian.
Colonial residue barely left a mark, as if these brown people never fought in your wars. I take a moment cause it's par for the course. They wanna use us out far to outsource politicians to endorse. Went from Rosa Parks to oligarchs, hospital beds in Central Park, while the whole world mental and dark. A stark reality and meant to be glad to be a casualty of a system. I got my facts.
At one point I remember my brother and I, he was driving and I was a teenager, and he drove straight into a National Front march, in Chatham, where we had skinheads banging on the roof, shouting out stuff at us. All we could do was laugh because I thought, this is hilarious. They're seeing a couple of Asian kids, kind of like in a car right in the middle of that made them look, to me, it made them look quite ineffectual and pathetic. They couldn't do anything. There were police flanking them, and they were walking alongside them. So it was kind of like, they just looked angry at us, and that was it. And I just thought, God, you're pathetic.
Guess I'm too live and banned like the county of Broward. I might have scoured through the earth to find it's really sour. I might have powered through the pain to an ivory tower. The ever optimist trying to make sense of this. Connecting dots don't make sense like a mentalist. The grand battle, our leaders milk it like cattle. So get a lasso, cause some of these snakes don't rattle.
The whole idea of the Raga system is to actually reflect the mood you're in and the time of day you're in. I'm quite melancholic in a lot of ways. When I'm working on an album, Rag Bervi will be a favorite go-to. But of course, with tracks that I wrote in the past, like Nadia, that was in Rag Desh, which is actually a very beautiful rag. It has a real sense of hope and a very wistful feeling to the rag. What I love about Indian classical music is the nuance and how incredibly deeply it goes into human psychology and intuition and mood and feelings. It's the music of emotion for me more than anything else. I mean, and I've talked about this many times with because I studied Beethoven's life quite a few times, and I've said that I found it fascinating that in 1816, when he was 46 years old, he actually was writing down random words from Hindu scripture, and it was at a time when he was totally deaf. And I think this was at a time when he was creating his greatest music, when he had no sound input. He was actually drawing on much more spiritual kind of ideas. And I think that the Rag system and Indian classical music is very much about is about spirituality and about finding your connection with the universe and with your internal self. So it's a very beautiful system, and it's about really exploring your own identity and own ways of connecting with any given mood.
Down the road there's something better. Down the road we're getting stronger. Down the road we'll lead each other back home. There's a time we'll stand together. There's a time may come whatever. There's a time we'll rise and take back the day. Down the road